Hello, my name's Jane Weir and we're in my studio in Derbyshire. Today we're going to talk about my war poem Poppies, and then we're going to go outside and walk in the landscape in which the poem is located in. So we've come out of the studio now and we're in Holy's Park, which is really where the poem began. We're in St Giles's churchyard in Matlock and we're just about to go up to Pictou where the War Memorial is. This is a place I came up quite a lot with my youngest son. Every day we'd walk out from home or sometimes from the studio and we'd walk up through the park up to St Giles's churchyard, and we'd walk the long winding path which leads up to the War Memorial. I think people often think that graveyards are sort of very scary places, but both me and my youngest son James found this place a kind of playground, sort of a way of escaping. You know, lots of sort of beautiful things in the graveyard, the stones and the masonry work on the church and the inscriptions on the graves. And though it might seem a little bit bizarre, it's a place of kind of escape and fantasy. I think wandering through the graveyard and sort of wandering through the stones, you notice graves which were both 19th century, 18th century, earlier than that, 15th century, but then you start noticing dotted all over like toadstools, these white puffy stones, small and squat in the grassy mounds, and you go a bit closer and certainly we're drawn to them almost, and you notice that these aren't people who are dead from a long time ago. These are people who died in wars, the First World War and the Second World War. And it's very poignant. So I think it was this constant repetition, because it was a sort of daily thing we used to do, come up here, seeing the gravestones, especially of the war dead, that made me think about, the idea of losing a child and what that must feel like. A lot of the graves were of young men, soldiers and airmen. Some were only as young as 18 years old, And as a mother, I kind of tried to almost put myself, if you can at all, into the position of people that may have lost either husbands, lovers, children. So we've reached the top of the hill, and this is the War Memorial that commemorates the dead, the men and women who served and who fought in the First World War and the Second World War. Also includes somebody from Northern Ireland, which I think's a step forward. And this is the War Memorial, which I describe in the poem as leaning against like a wishbone, which is really what I thought the mother, the character in the poem, did. And over there, you can only just about hear it now, is the ghostly sound of children's voices in the playground. So Poppies is really a poem of remembrance. It's remembering the dead. It's remembering not just them dead, but as alive and as active as the boy is in the poem. And it's falling really fine, the mist now. And the leaves are all burnished and golden. And sometimes when the breeze falls, they just shower the ground. Not like poppies, but like lost souls, really. And it just, I think this time of year reminds you of the people who were here, not just long ago, but people who are fighting now in wars and who are also dying. And I think it's important for each generation really to remember that. I'm a designer, and when I was writing this poem I was trying to think of ways of actually using metaphors from my own textile practices, and grief's a really difficult emotion to capture in a way that doesn't sound cheesy or completely sentimental or even false. And I tend to think about emotion through thread and through cloth and weave and pattern even. And then I was looking at a piece of felt that a friend of mine had brought in, And I started to think about the process of felt making, and I thought it was a good way of explaining the way grief compacts upon itself. If you think about felt making, you think about the layers, the way they overlap with each other and then almost melt into a kind of solidity and form a kind of barrier, a sort of muffling barrier to pain or to anything that tries to penetrate it. I thought that would be a really interesting way of actually talking about pain and in a way about loss and what we actually do with loss and where it goes in the body. And the line, all my words rolled, turned into felt, slowly melting, was really a way of trying to convey what happens to emotion when it enters the body. And Emily Dickinson, the great American poet, talked about grief. She talked about after great pain, a formal feeling comes. It seems so true. So we just walked up from the War Memorial and we're up at High Tor, Poppies. 3 days before Armistice Sunday, and Poppies had already been placed on individual war graves. Before you left, I pinned one onto your lapel, crimped petals, spasms of paper red disrupting a blockade of yellow bias binding around your blazer. Sellotape bandaged around my hand. I rounded up as many white cat hairs as I could, smoothed down your shirt's upturned collar, stilled the softening of my face. I wanted to graze my nose across the tip of your nose, play at being Eskimos like we did when you were little. I resisted the impulse to run my fingers through the gelled blackthorns of your hair. All my words flattened, rolled, turned into felt, slowly melting. I was brave as I walked with you to the front door. Through it opened the world overflowing like a treasure chest. A split second and you were away, intoxicated. After you'd gone, I went into your bedroom, released a songbird from its cage. Later, a single dove flew from the pear tree, and this is where it has led me, skirting the churchyard walls, my stomach busy making tucks, darts, pleats, hatless without a winter coat or reinforcement of scarf, gloves. On reaching the top of the hill, I traced the inscriptions on the war memorial, leaned against it like a wishbone. The dove pulled freely against the sky, an ornamental stitch. I listened, hoping to hear your playground voice catching on the wind.